following subject matter is real and only intended for mature audiences. Discretion is advised.
People are dead after deputies say a man went on a shooting rampage.
I knew a week before she died I was going to kill her.
I can tell you the scene out there is absolutely horrific.
Nobody knows where this individual may strike next.
This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, I'm the host, and thanks for joining today. It's part 2 of the Chris Watts story. A brief recap of what we covered in the first episode. Chris Watts, severe social anxiety, really into cars. Facebook messages Shanann a couple of times, and she finally agrees to go out with him. On one of their first couple of dates, she has a lupus attack, and he's pretty sympathetic about it, and she falls in love at that point. He is antisocial, she's sick and insecure, but they get together, obviously. You knew where this story was going. Before we jump into the second part, make sure you are subscribed to 10-Minute Murder so that you don't miss any future episodes. Also, connect with 10-Minute Murder on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Links for that are in the show notes of this episode, or just go to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, type in 10-Minute Murder to the search bar, and it'll pop right up, and you can follow there. Now, let's get to part 2. Half a year after their fairy tale wedding, Chris and Shanann Watts moved into 2825 Saratoga Trail in Frederick, Colorado. On December 17, 2013, the couple's first child, a daughter, Bella, was born. Shanann was over the moon about her baby girl. She'd been so afraid before that she'd never be able to have children because of her illness. Then, less than 2 years later, on July 17th, younger daughter Celeste, nicknamed Cece, completed the family. Chris and Shanann seemed to live a dream life with their 2 baby girls in their big house full of fancy items and a nice car in the driveway. But behind the scenes, the truth was the Watts were living way above their means and were just running up their credit card debt. And so the couple eventually filed for bankruptcy in June 2015. While Shanann still seemed to not stress about their finances at all, Chris did. But as typical for him, he never let it out. Still, if there were any problems in the relationship, Shanann made sure that nobody else saw them. She was constantly posting pictures and videos of her daughters and husband and their life all together on social media, but as most of us do, only the best parts. Lots of it was in part because of her multi-level marketing job at the time. But Shanann also kind of enjoyed the attention and wanted to keep up the image of a perfect family. Next door, their neighbor Nathaniel and his wife could sometimes hear Chris and Shanann screaming at each other late at night. They knew that something was not quite right at the Watts household. That June, Shanann found out that she was pregnant again. But even though Chris had seemed happy about the news, he began to grow distant from his wife. There were times when Chris didn't even touch her anymore or answer her calls when away. Shanann was sure something was going on, often speaking about her marital issues with her friends. Still, it seemed impossible to get answers from Chris himself. That was until August 9th, when Shanann texted her best friend. She and Chris had their, quote, best talk yet. Maybe they could fix their marriage after all, but unfortunately, Chris had something else in mind to get out of the situation. On August 13th, 2018, Shanann returned home around 2 a.m. from Scottsdale, Arizona, where she had gone to attend a Lavelle leadership seminar. Shanann went straight to bed, where Chris was lying awake. The two did not exchange any words, but ended up having sex before falling asleep. The next day, Shanann's friend, Nicole, began to worry. Shanann had not returned her text messages, and she had missed her OBGYN appointment. Quote, I called her and texted her several times. I knew she had a doctor's appointment that morning because she was pregnant. She didn't show up for it, and I was even more concerned. And so when Shanann also missed their business meeting, Nikki went to her house. There, she saw Shanann's car, but nobody answered the door. At this point, Nikki was so concerned, she called Chris, who seemed to be more annoyed than worried that nobody had heard from his pregnant wife. She's on a play date, Nikki. I don't know what to tell you. I'm at work. I will try to contact her. Would you please leave and stop messing with my doors? It was not until multiple calls and text messages from several people and one of Shanann's friends telling Chris Nikki was going to call the police before he finally agreed to come to the house. Meanwhile, Nikki called the non-emergency line of the Frederick Police Department. 4 minutes later, an officer was dispatched to the Watts family house to carry out a welfare check. Through his body cam footage that was released later, we get a very good picture of what was going on during the first moments after Shanann was reported missing, and especially how Chris was acting after he finally arrived back home. At 2:07 p.m., Chris pulled up in his work truck. He calmly introduced himself to Officer Coonrod before entering the house through the garage by himself, and then opened the front door from the inside. While the officer was looking around inside the house, Chris mentioned, "All the girls' blankies are gone. They don't go anywhere without them." Weirdly, Shanann's iPhone was found under a pillow on the couch. She would have never left her lifeline home on purpose, and still, Chris kept repeating the story of her going to a kid's playdate without her phone or her car, and now Chris was telling that he and Shanann were actually going through a separation. Something that not a single one of Shanann's friends was aware of. They knew they had been having issues, but according to Shanann, she wanted to work them through. Then, all of a sudden, Chris walked into their bedroom and came back with Shanann's wedding ring, saying, "I found this on the nightstand. That's weird." To confirm that Shanann had indeed left with her children, Officer Coonrod went with the others next door to take a look at the neighbor Nathaniel's CCTV footage. While checking the video, Chris can be seen on the body cam repeatedly being visibly uncomfortable. On the CCTV footage, Chris can be seen backing his work truck into the driveway at 5:17 a.m. He explained that he was just loading up work stuff, not sounding very convincing while doing so. How is it possible that only the things that the camera had picked up were Shanann coming home around 2 a.m. and Chris leaving to work closer to 6 a.m., yet Shanann and the girls were not in the house? When Chris then nervously shook his neighbor's hand and thanked him before walking out, Nathaniel said what everybody was thinking. He's not acting right at all. He's normally quiet and, well, subdued and never talks. So the fact that he's over here blabbing his mouth makes me kind of suspicious. The next day, as there were still no signs of Shanann and the girls, Detective Baumhover issued a press release appealing to any information available. That afternoon, Chris appeared on Denver 7 to talk about the disappearance of his family.
Right now, you got K9 units, the sheriff's department. Everybody's like they're doing their best right now to figure out like if they can get a scent, see where they went. I hope that she's somewhere safe right now, and with the kids, if somebody has her and they're not safe, like I want them back now. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like if somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring her back.
While it is already weird to watch Chris speaking about his missing wife and daughters without any signs of distress, almost having a smile on his face, his statement got a lot more disturbing after police discovered the next day that Chris had actually been having an affair all this time. CBI agent Tammy Lee had received a phone call from Anadarko Security saying they had found evidence in Chris's work email of him having a romantic relationship with another employee, Nikki Kessinger. That same day, in the evening, Chris was asked to take a polygraph test, which he failed miserably, partly because he didn't know yet that the police had found out about Nikki. Agents pressured Chris to just tell the truth, that they knew there were two Chris's, one who was a great guy, a good father, and one who had done something really, really wrong. And yet Chris answered, "I didn't do anything." It wasn't until Chris was left alone with his father, who had come to support his son, in an interrogation room that he finally opened up and told his best friend what had happened. According to Chris, he had had an argument with Shanann about their marriage and wanting a divorce. Afterward, Shanann, who was freaked out, had smothered their children before Chris did the same to her. However, the real truth was this story was Chris's last attempt to save his sorry behind. And he was responsible for every single death, himself. Chris Watts was arrested on August 15, 2018 at 11:30 p.m. on suspicion of 3 first-degree murder charges and 3 charges of tampering with a deceased human body. The next day, the bodies of his dead girls and his pregnant wife were found. After Chris pointed out the location, Shanann Watts' body, with her unborn son Nico, was discovered in a shallow grave near the Anadarko Petroleum property where Chris worked. The bodies of the 2 little girls were found inside 2 oil tanks. The scene was gruesome enough to cause PTSD for one of the officers responsible for recovering the bodies. Even though it had been clear all along that Chris knew what happened, nobody could have ever imagined he really killed his whole family, especially little Bella and Cece. And so everyone was left with two questions. Why? And who was Nikki Kessinger? In the next episode, you'll hear the answers. That's today's 10-minute murder, brief and bingeable true crime. Thanks for joining today. In this part of the episode, it's not unusual for me to get emotional during these episodes, but that emotion is usually sadness. And it's a sadness that I feel for the victims that are involved. But in the episode today, it's sadness mixed with extreme anger. It's unbelievable to me that someone could do the things that Chris Watts has done. And he didn't do them to people that he didn't know. He didn't do this to strangers. He did this to his wife, his two little girls, and his unborn baby. For what? Nikki, the girl he was cheating on his wife with? It's absolutely insane to me. So in the next episode, we'll talk more about Chris Watts, obviously, but also as it relates to his relationship with Nikki Kessinger. And if you're thinking at this point, she just had this minor role in the whole situation, she didn't really know what was going on. No, that's not the case. We'll go much deeper into that on the next episode. But in the meantime, make sure you're subscribed to 10-Minute Murder. Wherever you're listening right now, click subscribe and you won't miss any future episodes. Also connect with 10-Minute Murder on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Links are in the show notes of this episode. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder. Stay safe and good night.